Getting into the NBA, now that we're a couple weeks in, we've gotten to see some life from some teams and getting to see who's doing their thing. So we'll start with the Los Angeles Lakers. This rookie, Dalton Connect, has just been absolutely tearing it up. And a lot of people feel like he's showing signs of obviously being a J.J. Redick prodigy. They wear the same number that J.J. wore when he was playing with the Clippers. He's a shooter. They're already running plays for him. The other night he scored, his career high in points.
37?
Ended up hitting, 37 points. Ended up hitting
crazy.
9 threes. He's been playing big time. I believe I saw a stat that over the last 5 games he's shooting 67% from the three-point line, which naturally he'll come back to earth a little bit, I'm sure. But 67% over 5-game stretch, that's just unheard of and unreal. So kudos to him, coming in with the confidence, doing his thing right away. So what's your opinion of what it takes for somebody who's a rookie to be able to have success so early in the league?
One, I think, is just obviously the confidence piece.
Yeah.
Like, you have to come in and be more confident in yourself than anybody else. Mm-hmm. But also, it's just being able to quickly adjust to the environment, but also being able to quickly adjust to the coaching and the speed of the game almost instantly. And the funny part is it's super rare. Mm-hmm. And then the other side of it is you have no idea who's going to do it. Right. All these rookies are going to come into the league and they're like, oh, the higher round pick is going to make the instant impact. And maybe they end up like a bench player. They score like 7-8 points. Mm-hmm. So you don't know who's going to do it. But the nice part is when you come in, you can adjust pretty quickly and you're confident, then you're going to end up playing well early. And he's played ridiculously. And the interesting part is obviously the Bronny James situation was like overshadowing him for a long time, and then he like pops out of it, and you kind of saw glimpses of it in summer league.
Yeah, well, naturally, I mean, like any league in the world, you have to have the opportunity in order to show your stuff. So you have to have a coach who's going to be willing to take a chance on you, a coach who's going to be willing to put you in the game, and then it's going to be your responsibility to start showing signs of life. So early in the season, right, J.J. Redick was giving him some burn, putting him out there here and there in spots. But now he's literally closing games. He's on the court at the end of the games, and they got him and Austin Reeves, on the court together. And if there's any coach who's going to make it happen, naturally it's going to be J.J. Redick because he can see like what the value of a spot-up shooter is. But the thing that people don't realize about Dalton Connect, he's got a big body. In that same game he scored 37, he was catching lobs, that were thrown from behind the three-point line. He's physical. He can dunk. He can get in space defensively. So, I mean, really big pickup for the Lakers. They've felt that way all along, but I don't know if anybody saw this. 37 points in a game.
I didn't see it.
Showing that kind of capability, like running plays for him, it's big time. So that, along with Anthony Davis, has been playing a season so far that's had him in the MVP running. I mean, he's averaging over 30, and they've still got LeBron James doing his thing, but to be 40 years old. And the rest of the team, they're doing well. So they went through a little bit of dip on the road, but at home, outside of the loss that they just suffered, I believe that was last night, their first loss at home.
Yeah.
In the last minute, right? And Anthony Davis had a chance to close it with 2 free throws. Yeah. But they've been doing really well with that. So NBA looking like, do you think the Lakers can make a run at the Western Conference Finals? What do you think? After seeing a little bit more now.
Lakers are always my team, but it's still like they got to be able to push that through the season. And also, once again, it's a conversation of health.
Yeah.
We've got like an aging Davis. We know Davis has a tendency to get hurt. LeBron James is obviously his age, 38. So it's like, can they stay healthy and then also keep the team chemistry? If they can do that, like my expectation is that they minimum go into the playoffs. Mm-hmm. But it's like, can we keep our health and good team chemistry through the playoffs in order to get to Western Conference Finals, which is going to be extremely difficult?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm looking at. If we can keep those things, then without question.
Yeah, the league is so stacked right now. I mean, every team that you look at has players who can be at that all-star caliber. Every team that you look at has people who can score, upwards of 20 points a night. And it's really just, like you said, a decision on what the chemistry situation is going to be, who's going to play well with each other, who's going to be healthy, and who's going to be able to make the stretch run. So this is where coaching really comes into play. I look at the J.J. Redick acquisition, and I was actually a fan all along of it happening because I understand what value it can bring to have like a young, hungry coach who knows the game. People talk about J.J. knows X and O's. Will he be able to do X, Y, and Z? And I go, if you've watched his personality all along, he's done a great job adapting to whatever situation he's in. Even as a player in the NBA, he showed to be a person who's consistent with his work ethic, consistent with his statistics. and those things generally yield themselves to somebody being a good coach. But
Yeah.
the respect piece that people talked about early on was never in question for me. I believe that players are going to respect somebody who has a good IQ about the game, and seems to know what they're talking about. And he seems to be a player's coach, like he's got a sternness to him, but the players seem to respect him and they seem to like what he's bringing to the table. So, we're going to find out. I mean, he's definitely done some dancing with the lineups, and D'Angelo Russell, he's had to check him a couple times with effort and everything, but he seems like he's starting to bring more to the table and then a different role. They're running multiple point guards. They have LeBron James running point guard. They have Austin Reeves running point guard, Gabe Vincent, and D'Lo as well. So it's interesting. I mean, their team is not one-dimensional right now, which last year I believe that was the biggest knock on them, is they were a little bit too easy to figure out, a little bit too predictable. And now they don't have that. I mean, you have a rookie scoring 37. Austin Reeves can go off any night. LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Rui Hachimura does well. And once they get their bench going, if they can get Jared Vanderbilt coming in, making some plays, Cam Reddish has done well. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
How they do. So other teams in the NBA right now, on the opposite side of the spectrum, the Sixers have not been doing well. Joel Embiid missed a lot of the beginning games in the lineup early on. Paul George ended up getting hurt, and even when he wasn't hurt, they weren't winning. Tyrese Maxey, I believe, was hurt. And so things have not gone well for the Sixers early on, who are hoping to have a really big year. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. The Paul George situation is super concerning. I think it's like 2 hyperextended knees in the past 2 months or something like that, and it's you need these players to be in the game in order for you guys to stay competitive. And then also the Joel Embiid situation. Once again, it's a conversation of injuries, but also, once again, it's a conversation of team chemistry.
Yeah.
Right? It's hard to have team chemistry if you've got players who are kind of straying.
Right.
But then also you have injuries, which means they're also not in the game.
Right.
So until they get everybody healthy and everybody decides to play together, it's going to be pretty shitty in the beginning.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, you have pro sports people who don't play pro sports sometimes don't often understand how important just the simple concept of availability is, right? You can go into coaching and fans and who's playing at home and who's playing there and who's playing hot and who's playing this, but availability is the primary thing. If your team who you'd like to be playing is not available, your chances are going to go down quickly, regardless of who you're going against, because you're going against good teams. It's not how it was in 1960, NBA. It's different now. Every team has players. Every team can win on any given night. So before, where you might look at, we're playing the Hornets tonight, we're playing the Hawks tonight, we're playing the Jazz tonight, this is going to be a rollover. Now it's any team you play has good players and can win. If you slip for half a quarter. If you slip for half a quarter, any team can win. Anybody can shoot threes. Anybody can dribble drive. Anybody knows the plays. So that's the big deal to being able to have these marquee players on a consistent basis. And so that leads into this concept, which is a sensitive topic, because I'm not a person who ever wants to take money out of anybody's pocket. If anything, I want to try to add it. But it's a conversation worth having. The fact that NBA players get paid what they get paid, is there an argument in your mind that you should get paid for how often you play? Or are you more of the thought of, no, based on the cachet that you bring to the table and what you've done previously is what you should get paid for, and then from there, how available you are, unavailable you are, is more irrelevant? What's your opinion on that situation?
I don't know. It's getting to the point that, obviously this isn't football, but you're seeing NBA players start to be more injured like NFL players. And so, obviously, there's no clause in, an NFL contract where if you're injured, then you're out. But, NFL contracts can be, cut very quickly just because of how injuries are set up. So if you're starting to see percentages of injuries go up immensely, there probably should be some type of clause built into the contract where they're like, okay, well, we'll drop your salary, especially, in a Paul George situation or a Kawhi Leonard situation. I think Stephen A. Smith said they both only played 50% of their careers because they've been injured the other half of that. So it's you're getting paid all this money and you get to sit half the season. What a life, you know?
Yeah, it's really tricky because you don't want to set up a scenario where somebody is trying to rush back too early from an injury because they're not going to get paid without playing type situation. I have to feed my family, I got to support my lifestyle type mentality, so I'm going to rush back from an injury and potentially add on to it. Like, you've gone through an injury, I've gone through an injury. Like, there is time that's necessary for some injuries.
Yeah.
But you also run to that other side where if Joel Embiid, and not even to name specific people, if there's people in the league who are getting paid a really high salary but not playing, and the fans are losing out on it, the game's losing out on it, the team's losing out on it, the fact that those people were still able to make the money because of what happened previously is a challenging concept, especially when it's multi-year contracts. It's different if it's like, hey, we're going to reevaluate this quarterly, and we'll get to the renegotiation table quarterly, or hey, this is what you did. We'll guarantee you this quarter, and the next quarter, if you didn't play 10 games, we're going to dock you in this quarter because of X, Y, and Z. A situation like that could make sense to me, but obviously it's a little too tricky when you're dealing with like really big business. You're dealing with a lot of sponsorships, you're dealing with a lot of fan money, a lot of TV money, and things have to be guaranteed to continue to increase the value of the league. So for those people who don't understand where the money comes from, if these players get paid, a lot of it is TV money. It's a TV show going, hey, we'll pay you this much to put your brand and your sport on our network. And then this much is going to go to the players, this much is going to go to broadcast, this much is going to go to these other places. But players are obviously driving the league. They're the ones who people come to watch. They're the things that people come to see. But if you're not playing, if you're not being seen, it creates a tricky situation. So that would be an interesting question for the fans to drop in the chat and in the comments. How you feel about that? How do you feel about the situation of somebody making $10, $20, $30 million a year and not having a mandatory minimum on how many games they have to play? Or what the situation is if they're not able to play.
And there's that the 65 game rule
for MVP, right?
Yeah, for MVP awards. And like end of season awards, which would literally immensely grow your salary because there's usually those options in your salary if you get like a all NBA player or all defensive, something like that, and you got to play a certain amount of games in order to do that, which I don't know, to a certain extent I'm like, yeah, there should be like some kind of playing minimum because last time I checked, all the old school players always played.
Right.
And that's what happens. All old school players are like, yeah, we played this amount all the time. Like, why is there a bigger issue now?
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the game is faster and harder and more athletic and all these things. However, there's also better things to maintain the body. There's also better technology, better science that way. So it may even out that way. So I'm going to give you 5 names of NBA players, and I want you to give 1 or 2 sentences on your perspective of either where they are or how they are. So first one, Victor Wembanyama.
Unstoppable within a year or two. Completely unstoppable within a year or two. Period.
Bam. All right. Buddy Hield. Golden State Warriors.
Found a system that fits him perfectly and literally is raining threes.
LaMelo Ball, Charlotte Hornets.
I got a lot more to say about him, but that's because I've been watching the Ball family. We've been watching the Ball family since they
Young
were
days.
in high school, but I thought LaMelo was going to be the best Ball, brother when he was making half-court shots when he was 15 years old. Yeah. I was like, he's the best shooter. Shooters are going to go in the NBA and stay in the NBA. And now that he's taller and better, I think he's going to end up being easily, if he's not, one of the best point guards in the NBA for years to come, period.
Sure, for sure. Okay, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Milwaukee Bucks.
Same thing, like a Wembanyama, completely unstoppable. And now committed to shooting, which I'm really excited about because he couldn't shoot before. And now that he can shoot, he's making threes in mid-ranges, opening up his game to be even more unstoppable, which is what I like about him.
Okay, last one. Jalen Brunson, New York Knicks.
Brunson, man, the guy is shifty.
Yeah.
Shifty, smart, can see the court, can move around, but also he's ice in the veins player.
Yeah.
Wants to be the guy who's shooting the shot at the end of the game, ton of confidence, which is why I like him.
Yes. Yeah, with each one of those players, going through, you see people in every sport, right? Different heights, different sizes, different weights, everything. You see players like Giannis Antetokounmpo, which are really thick and tall and athletic. You see players who are smaller, like Jalen Brunson, who don't run the fastest 40 and aren't, anywhere above 6'1".
Yeah.
But, both 40-point game scorers,
Yeah.
So it's proof that in sports there's so many ways to be successful. There's so many ways to figure it out. What you have to have that's symmetrical, like you said, you have to have the mind. You have to have the mind that's going to say, this is the direction I'm going. I'm going to make it happen regardless of what's in front of me. So big note to the youth out there. So closing up on basketball, as you look at the transition now from college to NBA, college has gotten a lot of flack because it's in this situation now where a lot of people feel like it's pay to play. The college game was largely built on school spirit, camaraderie amongst the team, growing as a person. People, players, coaches, parents, community felt for a long time like players were being undervalued. Universities were making all this money off the players' name, image, likeness, and so that needed to change. And so the NCAA made this drastic change. They didn't scale it out. They flipped the script quick and said, okay, players, we're going to let you get paid whatever you want, basically, and it's going to be legal. And so now it's created this situation where college is, I would say, even more of a pro sport than pro sports because there's no rules on it.
Yeah.
And it's created this whirlwind where there are good, talented players who are going, but there's definitely not as much camaraderie. There's definitely not much talk about the individual teams and now more the individual player. And it's causing some of the best coaches, to name a few, Mike Krzyzewski, the Virginia coach as well, to leave the game because they're not able to handle the way it's gone now, and they don't really like what it looks like now. You see it on the football side with Nick Saban and people like that who've openly admitted, I'm essentially leaving because the game has changed in this way. So there's pros and cons to all situations, of course. What is your overarching opinion now from how college is going to transition to the NBA? What does what's happening with the college game and recruitment and NIL and name, image, likeness, how does that transition now to the professional ranks?
I'm completely with college players being paid. And I want to put that on record 100% since I was a kid, especially with football, because NCAA and the schools make ridiculous amount of money for showing college football. And I was like, why aren't these players really getting anything for it? And as you know, I have a cousin who played in college, and he was like, yeah, I was getting maybe $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
And he was like, I don't really get anything for this. And I was like, bro, you're literally the product, and I'm sure that your school and program is making millions for you guys going to the bowl this year. And so I'm happy that even if it's a small percentage, the players are actually receiving a financial benefit. And for me, the way that I see it, I'm like, this has always happened. If you go overseas, there are players who are 15, 16 years old playing pro ball getting paid, right? So to me, this isn't much different than that situation. The effect on the pros is that you might have some kids who stay in college longer,
right?
Because they're like, I'm already getting paid. I like being in college. I don't need to go pro yet, which I think you're starting to see a lot more on the women's side because the college women's players can get paid more than WNBA players.
Yes.
So maybe it might be different on the men's side, but I'm with it. And I think if you're going to have all this money that colleges are making, why wouldn't the product be paid for? Because last time I checked, the product usually always gets paid for the entertainment.
Right. Yeah, I find it's a really tricky time in sports right now because you have so many sides who are just at opposites, right? Obviously, the universities and the coaches and those two things, the universities and the coaches really wanted to hold on, to the way it was, and the players were pushing to get it to change. And my biggest opinion on the whole thing is there has to just be rules. Anything has to be governed by rules. It's
parameters.
The things I don't want to see are in football, for example. UNLV, the guy who transferred there for quarterback, ends up going, hey, he commits to a handshake deal or whatever the case. Obviously, I wasn't in the room, but handshake deal. Hey, we'll pay you X amount, $100,000, call it, round number, to come play here for this year. Okay.
Yeah.
It's going to happen in these installments, whatever. Goes through the first 2 games. Hey, I'm not getting the money that you said you'd give me. Goes to the 3rd game. I'm not getting the money you say you give me. If it doesn't happen by the 4th game, I'm going to redshirt because I have 4 games to declare redshirt. This team's doing really well, undefeated. These other kids come to the school because of that guy. Hey, we want to be a part of this. Everything's going great. I'm one guy. I'm not getting what I said I'd get. I'm out. And so you could see it from the player side of if you university, the assistant coach, head coach, whoever, you promised this kid this was what's going to happen, it didn't happen, he has the right to bail. But then all these other lives that get hung in the balance, and lost. It's because stuff isn't under contract, because stuff isn't public knowledge. It's not hey, if you're going to do this, it has to be, everybody has to know what's happening type situation. that's the part that's tricky for me. So my personal opinion is one way, this I'm not saying what I'm about to say is the only way. This is one way it could be improved, is if they said this is the cap of what you could get paid, anything above that's illegal. You know, this is the cap. We're not going to have a situation where 18, 19, 20-year-olds are making $4 million, you know, and not sure how to manage it. And there's this big separation in the locker room. Somebody who has no money, somebody's got $4 million. Like, you've been in a college locker room. Like, there's already contentiousness. There's already, like, rifts and challenges. So when one person is what was Tim Tebow back in the day, what was Reggie Bush, that kind of media spotlight, but now the money to go along with it, the ability and the flex to go along with it, versus the kid who's the walk-on, you know, just barely squeaking on the team, no money, no scholarship. Those two people in the locker room together, it creates a funky dynamic, you know. So
it creates a rub.
You're never going to be able to make it here.
Yeah.
But if we could bring it a little closer, I'd be in favor of that. That part, like putting a cap on what the number would be, and then 2, having it to where if you have an NIL deal, not only does it have to be a public contract, but it has to be like entered into documents with your team, and your team has to like post it type situation.
Oh, like pro style.
Yeah, and so what gets tricky with that obviously is like then, you know, you expose kids. You know, kids get super exposed. But I believe if we're gonna teach them, you can get paid and do this, and your name, image, likeness are gonna afford your lifestyle. You got to be able to deal with the challenges too. So you got to be able to deal with, people are going to come ask you for money now. Your family's going to try to lean on you. You're going to have people coming out of the woodwork trying to like cut through and like, well, they're only 18, they're only 19. Well, you can't have your cake and eat it too, is my opinion. You can't get paid like real adult money, but not deal with the challenges adults deal with. Or we can go back to the way it was. I'm not in favor of the way it was. I believe players should get paid. I believe that if you're putting your body at risk, time at risk, there should be an allocation for that. The same way these players could go work at Subway and make X amount of money for that time. If you're going to treat sports like a job and there's a product that has to be put on the line and other people's jobs hang in the balance, you should be able to get paid for that. I'm very wary of this concept of like a player can make more than a coach. Like, just because of the simple fact that a player may be the product for sure, but I also do go to the concept of the brain is not fully developed until 24, 25, 26 years old. And when you're dealing with that kind of shift, like, hey, I'm a 19-year-old who makes more than the person instructing me, whether it's said out loud or not, the respect factor there like ends up having a kink in it. And it gets really tricky, which is why you see people jump ship so quick. Hey, I'm gonna transfer portal. I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna go there. Oh, you didn't do what you said. I'm leaving. I'm just throwing everybody is left hanging in the balance. Like those are the negative stories. Of course, there's a lot of positive stories to it. Like people now who are from really impoverished areas, like they can get paid and get their families out of those situations quicker. They can start to build more of a portfolio and be able to get more brand deals and more sponsorships and more investment earlier. Right? Those things are the positive stories. But I have to look at both sides, when it comes to it.
I definitely agree with that. It's still, I mean, they're still young, but I'm like, there are players who are 18, 19, 20 that end up just going pro. So then they end up pushing that situation either way. So for me, I'm like, just like a 20-year-old in the NBA, 20-year-old in college, you're getting paid. Obviously, that relationship on campus is very different than a professional relationship because you guys actually really spend time apart. But in that college situation, like you guys are always around each other for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.